It's no secret that home insurance prices are going up, and it's not just inflation that's to blame. Rising premiums are just one more example of how climate change may be hitting you in your wallet. I'm Weather and Radar meteorologist Mary Mays, and today we're going to talk about changes in the home insurance industry and how they may be impacting you. There is growing evidence that climate change is impacting the number, frequency, and duration of natural disasters. Melanie Gall is an associate professor at Arizona State University and the co-director of the Center for Emergency Management and Homeland Security, and she's seeing the impact of these changes.
They become more common and they become more expensive. It's a somewhat saddening day to day in my job that we only see the losses go up.
The U.S. experienced a record $28 billion disasters in 2023, and many areas struggle to recover after disaster strikes. Higher costs from disasters have made home insurance costs rise, and in some cases, it can be incredibly challenging to find a policy at all. The increase in disasters has even led to some insurance companies pulling out of flood and fire-prone states like California, Florida, and Louisiana. A lot of folks are just not getting the policies they need. Outdated infrastructure is also unable to keep up with changes in the severity of our natural disasters, making matters even more perilous in areas where flooding, wildfires, and other natural disasters often occur.
So despite all the investments we make in hazard mitigation, resilience, it's either climate change is outpacing our investments, or we really are becoming more vulnerable as a country, meaning we have maybe increased social vulnerability in the population that we deal with, and maybe we're also making poor choices in terms of where we put our infrastructure, homes, etc.
As disasters become more common, it also becomes more expensive for insurance companies to offer coverage, and they pass those costs along to their customers. According to Policy Genius, home insurance prices have gone up 21% nationwide from May 2022 to May 2023, and that's on top of a 12% increase from the year before. Florida has experienced the highest rate increases of any state in the country. The average price of home insurance in the Sunshine State increased by 68% in just 2 years. In many cases, people simply can't afford the insurance they need to protect their homes.
And there, the big issue is that people often underinsure. So, because you also make trade-offs. You only have so much money to go around. So you think about, oh, what should my deductible be? And how much content do I have? How much is it worth where I live in? So underinsurance is a big issue. And then purchasing insurance is really challenging because, as we've seen now in recent months, insurance costs, they can swing wildly from year to year. Because if you think about your own, like, let's say homeowners insurance, you renew this policy from year to year. So that gives an insurance company the chance from year to year to evaluate, do we want to keep you as a customer? And is the cost of your policy actually reflective of the risk in terms of the area that you live in? And do we want to, keep this risk in our portfolio?
It also doesn't help that home insurance is complicated. Often, a traditional home insurance policy isn't enough coverage. Riders, add-ons, and completely separate policies may be needed to protect your home.
I think most people think about, oh, I have to buy homeowners insurance when I buy a house. And then everything else is sort of secondary. Nobody thinks about that maybe when they purchase a house and they have to sign the papers, all of a sudden they have a little sheet of paper that says, oh, and you also have to buy flood insurance. And maybe you also need to buy wind insurance. So I think the complication of how insurance is structured, that in some areas there's a separate edition for this type of hazard, and in others it's not. It's really confusing, I think, for the everyday person.
Even if you're a renter and you're not a homeowner, home insurance price increases could be impacting you. Higher premiums often lead landlords to increase your rent. Also, it can be difficult for renters to find resources and recover after a disaster strikes.
A lot of the programs from FEMA are geared towards property owners. So if you're a renter, none of that applies to you.
Post-natural disaster, rent prices often increase because there's a lower supply of non-damaged properties. And while a home insurance policy may cover some of these relocation costs, your renter's insurance policies can vary in what they offer.
And so then you are really left to compete in a market where more people are displaced, affordable housing is in short supply, and you move where you can move to, what you can afford to move to. But there is not really a lot of really financial resources available for these people if you don't have renter's insurance. Renter's insurance is the only mechanism that you can protect yourself as a renter.
Even if you live in an area that hasn't been impacted by a natural disaster, you might have noticed some price increases. That's because insurance companies like to spread the risk out.
So they also, as an insurance companies, they balance risk all the time. So insurance industry, heavily data driven. So there's no question about if there's climate change, it factors into models and decision making, everything. So they are really clued into what's happening in the disaster world. And it's not just what happens locally or nationally. It's really important also what happens globally, because if you're an insurer, you think about, okay, what's my portfolio? Who do I insure where? Do I only have like Floridians in my portfolio? Then, you have a massive exposure to hurricane risk. So they try to kind of, spread the risk to them. So maybe they have some people insured in the Midwest and maybe some earthquake risk, or maybe, some hurricane and some tornado. And so then the insurer balances these risks and spreads them out so that when something happens, it's not their entire portfolio that now all of a sudden was affected.
Insurance companies also have their own insurance policies. It's something called reinsurance.
So they buy insurance themselves, and that's the reinsurance market. And the reinsurance market operates globally. So it does not, it matters what happens around the globe and not just what happens in the US. And there's only a handful of reinsurers in that arena, big ones. And so their portfolio is spread globally. So they also have to do this balancing and reassessing of how much do they charge an insurance company.
So, what can you do? First, make sure you know what kinds of insurance you need. If you're a renter, make sure you know what's covered by your renter's insurance policy and, well, what is it? And if you're a homeowner, standard homeowners insurance may not be adequate for where you live. For example, flood insurance is something you may need to consider, even if you aren't required to have it.
From a financial point of view, it's actually very smart if you buy flood insurance when you're not forced to, because then it's actually really cheap and you are protected in case something happens. Because I think there's often this misunderstanding when you think about flooding, oh, you can only flood when you're like close to a river or close to the coast.
Also, think about the home you are buying. Is it built to withstand potential hazards? Also, are you moving to a prone location? Thinking about these things before you buy can save you a lot of money and heartache in the long run.
The burden is with you as a citizen. And so the first way, or the first mechanism, the first way that you can protect yourself is obviously, making smart choices about where you buy or where you rent, and then in what kind of house or home. And then the next mechanism is insurance. That is really the mechanism for us as residents to kind of protect ourselves.
At the end of the day, the best thing you can do is educate yourself about insurance and try to make smart decisions. Thank you so much for watching.